No one wanted to adopt him. This is how he looks 19 years later. Cleft lip and cleft palate are openings or splits in the upper lip, the roof of the mouth, or both. Cleft lip and cleft palate result when facial structures that are developing in an unborn baby don't close completely. Cleft lip and cleft palate are among the most common birth defects. They mostly occur as isolated birth defects, but are also associated with many inherited genetic conditions or syndromes. Having a baby born with a cleft can be upsetting, but cleft lip and cleft palate can be corrected in most babies. A series of surgeries can restore normal function and achieve a more normal appearance with minimal scarring. The following story is about a poor kid who was born with a cleft lip and cleft palate. James lived almost his entire life in the orphanage, but the beginning of the story of James started long before he went to the orphanage. The story started with James' mother, Sarah, who was a very beautiful young lady in college. In fact, she was one of the most popular girls in all the university. She was beautiful, smart, and fun. Despite what we've just mentioned, Sarah wasn't a good person. She was one of the most famous bullies in the college, especially with the new girls. Sarah used to be the top of her class. She was studying very hard because she always wanted to be the best. She must be the most beautiful girl, the smartest, and the best in the class. Sarah applied the same rules of perfectness on her romantic life as well. Sarah never had a relationship with a regular guy. He must be handsome, rich, smart, or all of them together. Sarah wanted for everyone to wish for having a life like hers. That's why actually she was in a relationship with John, the new guy. John got transferred from another college to Sarah's college to be near from his family. He met with Sarah the first day in the new college when she knew that he was new. She showed him the school and she helped him a lot, not because she was a helpful person, but because he was so handsome and he seemed funny. Sarah got more interested in John when he told her that he wanted to get transferred to this college to be near his family because his father needed his help in running the family business. She noticed at this time that he came from a very rich family and she didn't leave him. From that moment, Sarah and John became close friends, and very soon they became a couple. Sarah was very careful with John. She wanted him to realize that she was a gift and he needed to be thankful that she was in his life. Sarah knew that she succeeded finally when John invited her to have dinner with his family in their big house. At that point, Sarah knew that her relationship with John was taking a serious track, and she was happy with that. The only thing in Sarah's mind at that night was to make sure to leave a very good impression on John's family because she planned on living in that house in the future. She bought a new dress and she went to the salon to make sure that everyone at that dinner table would notice that she's the most beautiful girl that they've ever seen. John's family loved Sarah. They thought that she was the one for their beloved boy. Her mother even told him that after dinner, and he told that to Sarah later. Sarah was correct about her worry about leaving good impression to John's family because it moved so fast in their relationship. Soon after that dinner with the family, John proposed to Sarah, and before she even knew she was preparing for her wedding, which is going to be a very huge party. Sarah and John had a very expensive wedding. There were a lot of guests, and every single one of them was really impressed by what they saw in the party. Everyone's eyes were on the bride's dress besides the amount of food and drinks on the tables. After the big wedding, Sarah and John went to Europe for their honeymoon. After getting married to John, Sarah was living the best days of her life. She didn't have to work or worry about money because her husband was providing her with all of her needs. She was living in a big fancy house, and she had her own car with a private driver. Sarah used to spend her day in the malls shopping, having coffee, or meeting with her friends to have some fun. Soon Sarah got bored from her new lifestyle, but she didn't work either. After a lot of thinking, she thought that having a baby would help her, especially that she always wanted to be a mother. Sarah was so worried to talk to John about having a baby because they never talked about that, and she didn't know how he would react, but she went to talk to him anyway. John welcomed the idea, and he told Sarah that his parents told him once that they wanted a grandson, but he didn't tell her that because he didn't want to push her. Sarah and John were on the same page, so they decided to have a baby, and they started to work on it. They didn't have much of a problem in that case. After a couple of months, Sarah told John she was pregnant. When Sarah was 24 weeks pregnant, doctors told her that the baby would be born with a cleft lip and palate. After the initial shock of the news wore off, Sarah and her husband decided to let their son raise awareness for the condition until he was old enough for surgery. It wasn't easy for the couple to accept this fact, but Sarah's situation was way worse than John's. As we mentioned, she always wanted to be a mother, but she always was picturing herself holding a cute, beautiful boy, and she never thought that she'd hold a baby with a health issue. Sarah lived the 9 months of the pregnancy in a deep depression, but John was always telling her that she'll be okay after she delivered the baby because it's normal to feel depressed while pregnant. He also used to tell her that she'll love the baby more than anyone else, not because he'll be a beautiful baby, but because he'll be her son. And mothers love their sons. After 9 months, Sarah delivered her baby Brody. And as John said, Sarah loved her son. But this didn't last for long. After a while, Sarah told John that she was so proud of her baby and she wanted to share his photo with her friends, especially that such a thing would help them find a good doctor for him. The couple hoped that sharing the photos of their son James would help normalize cleft lips and palates, but in reality, they found far too many insensitive comments left on their son's photos and bore the brunt of outright and sidelong ridicule. In public, it began to seem that all the good people had up and gone. Sarah wasn't prepared to defend her brand new baby for harmful words from friends and also strangers. And as the days wore on, she grew more and more disheartened at the state of humanity. One day, Sarah was out to dinner with friends when their server delivered what looked to be a folded napkin to her hand. She assumed it concealed yet another "why don't you fix your child" sort of hate note, but its contents couldn't have been more beautiful. Inside was a check for $1,000 with a note in the memo line that read, "For the beautiful baby." Sarah got very angry and threw the note away. She looked at John and said, "Bullies online and our charity. I've had enough. Now people think that we're so poor that we don't even have money to fix our son's face." When James was old enough, his cleft lip and palate were successfully restored to normal, but he still had some scars on his face. Sarah was still having a problem with her son's face after all. She started to remember what she used to do to boys like him. When she was at school, Sarah was having nightmares every night. In her dreams, she saw kids laughing at her son, and the mothers were laughing at her. Sarah started to think that before having this baby, her life was perfect, and since he was born, everything changed. Sarah decided to leave her son and start from the beginning. But her problem was that she didn't know how to convince her husband. Finally, she decided to leave the young boy at the orphanage, and she'd speak with John. Later at that afternoon, Sarah told John that she left her son at the orphanage, and she wouldn't tell him where this orphanage is. John went crazy and he started screaming, but Sarah insisted on not telling him she was keeping to him. "We can start over without him." This conversation ended with John kicking Sarah out of the house, and he told her that he didn't want to live with her any longer. From that day, James started to live a long life in the orphanage because no one wanted to adopt him. Everyone wanted the cute, beautiful kids and no one wanted to take James home. The young boy didn't understand why no one wanted him, but one of his teachers at the school kept telling him that no matter if no one wanted him, as long as he doesn't need anyone. And the only way to grant that he'll not need anyone is to study hard so that he can make sure that he'll have a great future without the help of anyone. James was doing as his teacher told him. He was studying very hard, and he was the best student in the school. James was doing great in his life and he was happy as well. He didn't have to prove anything to anyone, and he was just having fun. At that time, John was still looking for his son, but he never could find him until he gave up and stopped booking. One day, after 19 years of losing his son, one of John's friends called him and told him that a young man applied for a job at his company, and from the application, he thinks that he's his son. John didn't believe that he'd find his son after all these years, but he went to his friend's office anyway to see the young man without telling him. After seeing James, John asked his friend to get the young man's cup to take a DNA test. The results of the test were a surprise to John because it confirmed that James was his missing son. When he saw the results, John went directly to James and told him the entire story from the beginning. James was very happy to find out that his father was looking for him all those years because he thought his family didn't want him like everyone else. After 19 years of living in the orphanage, James got back to his home again. He's living with his father now, and he's helping him in running the company.